Good morning. And joining us now, Republican Congressman from Florida and the first Green Beret to serve in Congress, the author of Warrior Diplomat, Congressman Michael Waltz. Welcome back to Mornings on the Mall. Great to have you.
Hey, good morning. Good to be with you.
You have been very vocal, and what I want to start out with is you've been very vocal on big tech's censorship. You tweeted out that it's extremely lopsided, it stifles conservative voices, and you are joining the fight to hold big tech accountable and make sure they play fair and play by the rules. How are you going to do that?
Well, we just introduced legislation in the House that mirrors Senator Hawley and Senator Rubio in the Senate that will hold big tech accountable. The first thing it will do is raise the bar for when it can determine whether something's true or not, or when it can determine if something should be censored. I don't want that being determined by a bunch of big tech billionaires in California or a bunch of millennials looking at algorithms. There needs to be a much higher bar, and then there needs to be legal recourse if they violate those agreements. So if a court determines that indeed censorship is involved, individuals can take recourse and can sue. That's currently not the case. Big tech is immune because of a section of the law called Section 230. I think that was perhaps appropriate in the early days of the internet when the internet was growing. It grew as somewhat of an unfettered platform. But now with the power that big tech has, with the power to basically not just determine winners and losers, but what people are thinking and what they are seeing, and now the power to influence presidential elections, that needs to be reined in, and that's what this legislation is seeking to do.
Congressman, it's an interesting time that we find ourselves in. Big tech has never demonstrated its tendency towards helping Democrats and suppressing conservatives more than at this moment. They're now doing it explicitly by trying to suppress news that could be damaging to Joe Biden, not on the basis of whether or not it's accurate, but just deciding that they're going to suppress it. And it's disheartening. But I worry, actually, at this moment, that there's an appetite on both the right and the left to regulate these big tech companies. And simultaneously, if Joe Biden wins this election and if Democrats take control of the Senate, all of a sudden you're going to have Democrats seeking to regulate these tech companies in a way that will not be favorable at all to conservatives. Is this the environment we're in right now? Do you sense the political winds that I'm sensing?
Well, I think there's two things. I mean, I'm never a fan of anyone in Washington, right, because of censorship or obviously anybody in Washington making those decisions, because what happens is that Congress will pass laws, but they tend to be so vague that you have unelected bureaucrats determining, really putting meat on the bones, right? That's why the courts and judges and the Supreme Court become so critical, because frankly, Congress doesn't pass specific enough laws. However, in this case, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, right? If big tech is acting like publishers, then people do need some type of recourse if they're censored.
Right.
So this kind of immunity provision where big tech has become just untouchable, I'm also not comfortable with. Look, at the end of the day, as a conservative, what I think they ultimately need is competition. And they've also, kind of gotten away with being able to stifle competition over the years. Look, the internet has grown so much over the last couple of decades. These companies now with $1 trillion market caps,
yes,
I do think need some type of intervention here. But in my view, it's competition more so than regulation.
Okay, so this opens up a really important question. They need competition. They are dominant. You just said they're destroying competition with their $1 trillion market caps. Should they be broken up? Is it time for antitrust?
Well, that's the road I think we need to go down. Yeah, and I know we could probably spend a whole hour with what that looks like. I don't think that's fully determined, but at the end of the day, what has kept this country great is an environment, a free market environment where competition can put pressure on those that are frankly become too big to fail and become too dominant over American society. And I would rather see us go down that road than Washington, D.C., trying to pick winners and losers.
Yeah, there's a lot of things we want to get to with you, but just very last thing on this in just 30 seconds. There was a lot of talk a couple of years ago about regulating them as a utility because they are necessary to American life. Is that still on the table?
Oh, I think it absolutely is on the table. But, as you guys were pointing out, this is why control of the Senate is so critical. In particular, of course, I want to get the House back. But, I think we can go down an irreversible road if the Democrats get control of both the House, the Senate, and the presidency, because the progressives at the end of the day will be the tail wagging the dog. And again, I want free market principles in there, not government regulation principles.
All right. We've got more coming up with Congressman Michael Waltz coming up right here on Mornings on the Mall. It is 6:43 on WMAL. We're here with Republican Congressman from Florida, Michael Waltz, joining us. Congressman, again, thank you for your time. We do appreciate it. We wanted to talk to you about Hunter Biden's laptop. John Ratcliffe, the director of national intelligence, yesterday said that the intel community does not have evidence that the release of those emails from what is supposedly Hunter Biden's laptop is part of a Russian intelligence misinformation campaign. That is what the left is saying. This is all Russian disinformation. The FBI's had this laptop for almost a year. What's been going on with it? Has something been going on in the background that we don't know about?
But, when Adam Schiff, as head of the Intel Committee, goes on national television and says, we know that this is part of Russian misinformation, he does that obviously implying that he has seen some type of intelligence that indicates it is. So I'm grateful and thankful that Ratcliffe, as the director of national intelligence, came out and said, no. I, as the head of national intelligence, have seen no information, no intelligence to indicate that to be the case. So once again, Schiff is politicizing his position. We don't know why the FBI has been sitting on this for so long. It would have been really nice to know during the impeachment debacle that the entire country went through. So I think we need answers there. But what is so interesting to me is the Biden campaign has yet to say that these aren't real, has yet to say that they're not true, has yet to say that this isn't Hunter Biden's laptop, has yet to say that he wasn't an equity holder as we speak right now with the Communist Central Bank of China, or didn't receive millions, if not billions of dollars from both Ukraine and Chinese interests. They have yet to deny any of that. I think they're just taking a strategy of trying to run out the clock, knowing that early voting is going on. And back to your point on tech and back to your point on mainstream media, they're taking the nothing to see here approach. And this is a true disservice. And just exposes the agenda of all of them. I'm putting social media in the same bucket with mainstream media on this because their agenda to get Donald Trump out of the presidency has caused them to set aside any semblance of journalistic integrity, that they may have had left.
Right. Yeah. Joe Biden doesn't need to campaign when the big tech companies and the media are doing it for him. Congressman, let's talk about voting. You operate something called, you've been an advocate for rather, something called Mission Roll Call. It's about veterans and voting. Tell us more about that.
Well, Mission Roll Call is a veteran service organization, private organization, but that I've been working with. We were successful in pushing through a veteran suicide bill. Went unanimous in the Senate and the House, which is, how incredibly rare that is these days. The president just signed it. At the end of the day, it will push monies down to the community level, down to the veteran service organization, rather than through the VA. We are still losing 20 to 22 veterans a day to suicide. We cannot sustain that, despite the VA's budget going from $45 billion to $200 billion in the last 20 years. So anything I can do to push monies down and resources down to these great organizations that are dealing with veterans eyeball to eyeball rather than through a Washington, D.C. bureaucracy, I'm all on board for because this is unacceptable as a country that we're still losing this many veterans per day. That's like losing nearly a brigade in combat per year. And we can't sustain this long-term fight against extremism and the rise of China with taking these kinds of losses.
Absolutely. And if people want to find out more about it, it's missionrollcall.org, missionrollcall.org. Congressman Waltz, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time.
Happy to, anytime.